Hey, what's up guys, it's Nick2 and today I'm going to be showing you guys the craziest build I've used so far within this game that's extremely good for a solo player but also works very well within a group, which will make you nearly invincible along with letting you do just a mind-boggling amount of damage, easily over 1 million DPS and way more damage when you actually have all of your buffs up in combat. My build is far from set up perfectly, but even without it being the ideal setup, I still do a ridiculous amount of damage as you can see, while having just a dumb amount of survivability. I can't even die if I tried to. With this build, I literally cleared a level 4 control point, not even moving from cover once, and it only took me a few minutes, so yeah, it's pretty crazy. At the end of the video, since a lot of people seem to be using this as a benchmark now, I'll leave gameplay of me completing a challenging mission in only 8 minutes, and that's with a build that's designed for staying alive, not for damage. I'm sure I could do it way faster if I were to run a full damage build, but it's pretty much just to show you how truly strong this build can be. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please make sure to drop a like as that helps me out a ton. Comment below what other videos you'd like to see from me in the future. And as always, if you need help gearing, leveling, setting up a build, email me at nick2biz@gmail.com. And also make sure to follow me on Twitch. Okay, now I'm done selling out. Let's get into it. Alright, so as I'm sure you saw, with this build we're going to be running a rifle, which means for the specialist, we're going to be running sharpshooter. Usually I run this anyways for the increased headshot damage, the reload speed, and the stability. Stability is actually very underrated, but it's super helpful. But I also get 15% increased rifle damage, so it's pretty much a no-brainer when using this. This actually complements the build extremely well and makes rifles much more stronger than they already are. Getting into the build itself, I will talk about every individual role, how to set it up properly, etc. I want to preface this by saying that this is far from perfect. I literally set this up today without even thinking about having the optimized pieces prior to setting this up. I just took whatever I had in my stash and was able to make this build. So if I were to spend like another week on it or something, I could be doing probably almost 50% more damage. I'd have way more armor, etc. But as you saw, I'm already shredding with this build, and I couldn't die even if I grenaded myself in combat. So the main components of this build are going to be Safeguard, which is going to give you extra healing after you kill a target. This only works when you are the person that kills this target, which is why this build is so strong in solo play, but it works great in group play too, because if you're using an MK17 or any gun with very high per bullet damage, you are often the person getting the kill. So Safeguard. Next piece that complements this build, or that is the integral part of this build, is Entrench. Headshots from cover repair 5% of your armor. When Safeguard is up, you're getting more than 5% per headshot. You're getting like 13% or something like that. And another piece or part of this build that is what makes it work is Unstoppable Force. Killing an enemy grants 2% weapon damage for every 10,000 max armor. As you can see, I have 222,000 armor, so we are getting a shitload of extra damage. The reason that we run this, I mean, it's kind of obvious, we're getting a lot of damage, but because you are sacrificing a lot of red attributes, i.e. damage attributes, to go for Safeguard, because you're doing that, you're losing out on a lot of damage. So to make up for that, you're going into Unstoppable Force and then stacking a lot of armor, making yourself extremely tanky whilst pretty much regaining all of that lost damage. If you don't want to use Entrench, you don't have to. As you can see in the gameplay at the end, I'm rushing people and not even in cover all of the time. You can still use this build and it works great even just by using Safeguard by itself, because Safeguard is such a good talent alone because it just provides you so much healing. And the main part of this build is just being able to stack so much armor and then directly getting the benefit from that in Unstoppable Force. But for solo players that may not have a very well optimized version of this build, even if you're trying to do like, level 3 or 4 control points, Entrench is absolutely insane because, even if you're running and gunning, take cover for 1 second when you're low, peek somebody with Safeguard up, headshot them 3 times, boom, that's like 50% of your armor almost instantly. So that's really strong. Now, the gun that I'm using is going to be the Police MK17. The reason for this is just because it's the best single fire gun. I know that a lot of people might think, well, why don't you just use a higher RPM gun so that you gain more benefit from Entrench? Well, the reason being, the MK17 just outclasses all of the other single fire guns by a mile. The damage here is very low, and truth be told, when you have a gun with this high of an RPM and you're trying to shoot it at max RPM to gain from the full benefit of Entrench, you're missing a lot of your shots, and you have to hit headshots in order to actually gain the bonus from Entrenched, right? So not only are you doing less damage, you're full spraying, which makes it very hard to actually hit headshots, and the damage that you're losing, it isn't negligible. It is a very large amount, so you'll definitely notice that. So you definitely want to run an MK. For the talent, I'd recommend going Optimist because you can only use this when you have 5 or less, so it's a great opportunity to try this out. You get a whole bunch of weapon damage every time you have low ammo, which is fantastic. You can also run Breadbasket or Ranger. I made a weapon talent guide video yesterday, so feel free to check that out if you want a more in-depth look at that. Secondary talent, I wouldn't like Allegro because, like I said, this build is headshot focused and you don't really want to be going for, full spraying your gun. I'd rather have stability or something here, but it really doesn't make that big of a difference on this type of a gun. Mods, just going to quickly go over: scope, crit damage; barrel, crit chance; muzzle, crit damage; magazine size, I go for the headshot damage one. Some people like this with Optimist because they think, since you have more bullets, you'll have more bullets with extra damage increase. I have a tendency to reload all of the time, and I just don't like losing the weapon damage. I like having the extra headshot damage, and I feel that using this with Optimist, I get the extra damage more consistently rather than having to shoot 20 bullets first until I feel like I'm getting more damage, but kind of doesn't matter. Second gun really doesn't matter. I'm using Merciless for the holster talent. It does a very low amount of damage though, so I wouldn't really worry about it. You could run Chatterbox, but like I said, you don't want to be full spraying your MK, so if you want, use it really doesn't matter what you use as your secondary because you're mainly just going to be using this gun. That's the main part of this build. For brand sets, I wouldn't worry about them too much. My brand sets are all over the place, as you can see. The reason for this is just because setting this build up perfectly, like getting the right amount of armor, getting Unstoppable Force, having the right red attribute rolls in the right places where you're going to benefit from it the most, and just getting all the right talent rolls is a huge pain in the ass once you actually try to set this build up. So I wouldn't worry about brand sets initially. I would try to fix your brand sets later on. Right now, my brand sets aren't too bad because I'm getting a ton of extra armor from them, which is great. The one-piece Wyvern isn't bad either because it's crit damage. My crit chance is kind of low, but isn't that big of a deal. Fenris, I couldn't give a shit less about. You definitely want to go for Overlord though. 10% rifle damage is great. And the two-piece isn't bad either. 7.5% total armor. More armor the better for this build, honestly. And then if you wanted to, you could run for the knee pads Overlord as well for damage to elites. The other thing I got is Gila. I would rather not have two-piece Gila. I'd probably rather just have three-piece Overlord and one-piece Gila, because Gila pieces give you a lot of defensive rolls and a lot of armor typically, which helps out when reaching, the threshold that you need for certain things. But yeah, two-piece isn't too bad. But yeah, one-piece Gila isn't bad either because 5% armor when you're stacking a whole lot of armor is really strong. So let's get into every individual role and what you would want ideally on there. Like I said, my pieces are far from ideal, but I'll definitely explain how they could be better and what you want to look out for. Actually, let me mention other decent brand sets just if you're curious. DNH is decent if you're trying to go for high damage. Providence is meh. I mean, extra health. It's percentage based, so you're not really stacking health with this. You want armor, so that's okay. Wyvern of course is good. Two-piece, maybe three-piece. Providence, I already mentioned. Murakami, health, that's okay. Overlord, like I said, is really good. You don't really want any other chest, maybe Gila, but I would definitely go for Overlord. DNH is pretty good. Accuracy, crit damage, crit chance, that's just extra damage. Or all these pretty good for accuracy and headshot damage as well. Anyways, individual rolls. For the mask, you definitely want a red roll here for damage to elites. As you can see, that's a ton of damage to elites. I would rather have a blue roll here, but it's only health and it's not going to be that big of a deal. For the talent, you want hard hitting. You can't really get any other decent talent. Hazard protection, skull haste, nothing's really all that good there. So hard hitting definitely, since you're not going to have that much damage anyways. You actually do have a lot of damage, but technically you're losing out on damage, right? Not running a full DPS build, so having hard hitting makes a big difference. Chest piece is definitely the hardest piece to get. You for sure want armor here. A lot of armor, 10,000. You definitely want weapon damage here for one of your red rolls because weapon damage, everything scales off of weapon damage, so you want to try to get a high weapon damage roll here. I only have 4%. Ideally, you could get about 10% weapon damage, and then for the second red roll, probably about 10% headshot damage because it scales based on how large the other rolls are. So that's what you would want ideally. Of course, you want Unstoppable Force here. If you're really lucky, you could get Unstoppable Force and Hardened. And maybe if you don't want the extra armor, you could go for hard hitting for the extra damage to elites. Rolls or mods don't matter that much. I have a nice generic mod which gives me headshot damage here, which fits in a defensive slot, which is awesome. Doesn't count towards a red attribute, which helps for the damage that I'm missing out on. And then for the defensive mods, I'm pretty much just going for armor, just cuz. Ulster, I don't want Fenris, but is what it is. It's the only one that I had that didn't have any red rolls on it that I could actually use with the talent Devastating. You probably want Devastating or Precise here. Helps you with extra damage. I just went for Devastating because it works on both headshots and body shots, and the difference between Devastating and Precise isn't that big of a deal since headshot damage is additive whilst weapon damage is multiplicative. For the backpack, I got health, crit chance, bonus armor. Instead of crit chance, you'd probably rather have weapon damage. You might even want crit chance and weapon damage. I don't really care about the health. The armor is great though. Definitely want safeguard. Hardened is pretty good. Could go for hard hitting if you want extra damage to elites. Mod, headshot damage, pretty cool. Gloves, these could be way better. I don't want this health here at all. I'd much rather just have flat 10% rifle damage. You definitely want that as one of your red attributes because 10% damage is going to be pretty much higher than anything else you can get anywhere. Same thing as a talent. I go for Devastating. You could go for Precise. Up to you, I suppose. I just like this because I get the armor here, but I could swap to Araldi if I wanted to get a little bit of extra rifle damage. I just prefer to have the set so it looks cleaner, but it doesn't make that big of a difference. Knee pads. Mine are kind of crazy. You want armor. Mine are Gila. Pretty cool. You get armor and you get 2 defensive mod slots on Gila, which is pretty nice. For the talent, I got Entrench. If you don't want to run Entrench, the only other option would really be hard hitting. But if you're running this build already, I would say Entrench is probably worth it because in certain situations, it can help you a ton just being able to heal that much. The mods don't matter a whole lot. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the build. The gameplay will speak for itself. It's insane. You can use this at a long range, at a close range, and you almost have to go out of your way trying to die with this build. The synergy between Safeguard and everything else is just crazy, and the fact that you're getting so much damage back with Unstoppable Force, it's really nice. In terms of talents, I would recommend Chem Launcher Heal is pretty good, especially when, like, I'd say this is probably the one talent that you definitely want. Even with 0 skill power, you heal to almost full instantly when Safeguard is up. Pair that with, you know, Entrenched, pop it while in cover, heal for a lot. Hive Reviver is great if you die and you go down, it's just a nice little scapegoat. Fixer Drone is actually pretty underrated. It's really nice with this because when you get Safeguard up, it does make this heal more, and you can just run and gun with this and it'll just passively be healing you while you face tank. And since you have so much armor, you can face tank while this heals you, and it's pretty good. But yeah, I'm gonna let the gameplay speak for itself. Hopefully I explained everything, and yeah, hope you guys enjoy the build.
Of transcripts and notes from months of prisoner interrogations. Information stored on the military-grade laptop, kept in the main holding area downstairs. Hostile control point identified. The first priority is to release the prisoners to keep the True Sons busy. We'll be looking for some kind of security terminal. Sounds promising. Find it and patch eyes again. Okay, I'm in. Now to open the cells. And the cells are open. The main holding area is downstairs. Get moving. True Sons seem to be in control of the holding area. The hyenas are knocking out security cameras. Pretty smart of them.
Play it safe. Going for the sportsman.
Getting flanked.
Reinforcements en route.
All right. Weapons free.
Yeah.
Win. There and take it.
Concussion grenade.
Just lost the camera feed from the holding area. There was a bright flash and then static. Picked up on camera again. The holding area is just ahead. Once you find that laptop, grab it and get the hell out of there.
Looks like you got True Sons reinforcements headed your way.
North or south side?
Both. Heavier concentration to the south.
With all those gates sealed, the north exit should be closer.
Come on.
Intel that's going to be a whole lot of help to